Jamie, can we start with a roll call, please?
Tim Shinian,
Here.
Jack McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Steenblock,
Here.
Jackie McNamara, Jim Blake, Terry Steenblock,
Here.
and Kathy Schulte.
All right. Next on our list would be to approve the agenda. One question I have, Jamie, where are we on minutes?
Those are going to be on our October meeting, and we'll have an agenda packet or a packet of all the minutes that are needing to be up to date, so you guys can approve it all at once.
Perfect. Sounds great. Any other questions or comments? If not, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? That passes. Next will be our open forum. Jamie, do we have anyone for open forum today? Thank you. All right, first person will be Denny Johnson.
Well, seeing how as we're on the agenda tonight,
Yeah.
thought I'd come by and just update you a little bit on this monster you've helped create pickleball out here. A year ago, we had a mailing list of 35 people. We now have 190 on that list. We have 81 or 89 people, and this grows every day, of people that have actually donated money as a group to do things like things that are on the agenda today. We also make name tags for people so that when they come out to play, you don't have to be saying, oh, what's your name again? This kind of thing. And right now we probably have about 90 to 100 people that play on a regular basis during the week. Some play once a week, some play 2 times a week, some people play every day. Robin plays all day, most days. So there's a lot of interest going on. Did you see the St. Paul paper pickleball article over the weekend? It mentioned Forest Lake in there. So again, we got another shout out. So people know what's happening out here. So that's kind of where we're at. The facility is really in very good shape, and we really enjoy it. Everybody praises the facility out there that are using. We have a couple of minor concerns about things like the tie downs or the center straps for the nets haven't quite been finished. We've actually zip tied them down so that we can control the height of the nets. Mm-hmm. We got potentially some surface issues in certain areas when it rains. Some places the paint surface gets soft. It's hard to see that when it's dry. You have to almost be there with water standing on it in order to tell. So we'll see how that happens and how it survives over the winter too. So just so that you guys are aware of that. And we have some debris issues that we've got to try to figure out how to deal with. We have brooms and stuff, but I don't know whether it's the mowers or the wind or whatever is putting some stuff on the courts. But other than that, everybody really enjoys the courts, and we get more people every day, it seems like, that show up to play. So good job, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask about the zip ties?
Sure.
You say that has not been completed yet. That is something on the contract that they left off, or that they just have to come back to do?
What happened is in the net, there's a center tie down for the thing. The eye bolt that they stuck in the concrete is too big to hold the clip that's on the strap. And so there's no way to actually clip it on there. So something has to be done with that clip or the eye bolt, whichever one, in order to solve that thing on an ongoing basis.
Somebody has to go down there, take a look at it, figure out what needs to be done, go to the hardware store, get the clip, and go fix it.
Right. It's one of those,
Okay.
why did I do that? Because they had both pieces, they just never put them together before they took it out there, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I had talked to Century Fence on that. They said they were going to come up with a solution, so I'll just revisit that with them. Maybe it just kind of fell off their little to-do list, but we have talked about that. It was the last thing on their checklist of items to complete out there, so I'll give them a quick update tomorrow and see if they can get that taken care of.
All right. Perfect. Next on our open forum is John Freed.
Thanks. So with winter coming up, I just thought I'd make another pitch for the dredging project out there on really all three docks there by Lakeside Memorial Park. I used the lake a bit over the summer, and I often pull the boat up to the center dock, I'll call it, and it is exceptionally shallow. I don't know if it's gotten any worse. But I would say it's probably a foot, maybe 15 inches at the most at the end of it. I mean, it's, if you've got an inboard like I do, you can really only get in one length on either side at the end. That's it. There was one time this summer where I had a 19-foot boat there, and the only space that was available was on the left side as you're coming in, second one in. And I shut the engine off and kind of pulled it in, but we couldn't get it out. The skeg actually got caught in there. We had one of us up on the bow of the boat trying to, lift it up a little bit. Finally, there was a fellow there that jumped off the dock into the water. He just barely got his ankles wet, and helped us to get it back out. But it's that bad. There's a continuing problem, of course, with the ramp docks, with the hollow, and then where the sand gets up from the power loading, and especially then on the outboard sides of those docks. I continue to think that the usefulness of those would be greatly improved if people could launch their boat and then be able to pull it around to the outboard sides of the docks, while they go put their car and truck up or whatever, that sort of thing. So anyway, just I know in talking to Jamie, there's a possibility of it being done this winter. I would certainly encourage that and hope that something could be worked out for that. I know your boat club produces some revenue to the city. It all goes in one pot anyway, but maybe some logic would be that maybe for 1 year's worth of their rent, that could help do that. It's kind of a related thing, but otherwise the docks are great. But if we could just get that sand moved around some, it would make it a whole lot better. Frequently you see people coming into the docks and they've got to lift their engine so high that sometimes they'll lose water pump suction on there, or they pick up a fair bit of sand when they're coming in. So anyway, I continue to be glad to help with the project any way I can, and would hope that maybe this winter it could finally get done. So
You bet.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah, Jack.
all sand running out to the end of the dock, or is it a silty light sediment? Or is it all?
I don't know specifically, Jack. In looking at it, it looks to me like a mix more of sand and rocks. Okay. If it was just sand, it wouldn't be quite so bad.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of harder material in there. Not a lot, but there's some in there. Especially as you get up towards the land side. Over time, rocks have gotten pitched in. Not real far out, of course. They can't throw that far, but whether it's silt or sand, I guess I'm not sure specifically what it is. There's no vegetation in there that I see other than some minor weeds. And my understanding in talking with Jamie, and Jamie, you with the DNR, is that they don't have any particular problem with it. We're not upsetting some grandiose ecosystem. We're just moving some of the sand or silt, as the case may be.
Have we only looked at a physical, like a power shovel digging, or have we looked
Well,
at?
that's what we had looked at. Remember, was it a couple of years ago, Jamie? I think we met with somebody out there, or was it Kathy? I don't remember.
I think it might have been
I guess
Kathy.
Kathy, that's right.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Kathy and I met with a contractor out there at least a couple of years ago. And he seemed to understand what the job was and said it would be best to do it in the wintertime, of course, when the docks are out. And basically, they would just go in with a backhoe and scoop the stuff out. And he said it would cut the cost pretty significantly if the city could provide the trucks to haul the fill off. I don't remember how many yards he said. It was quite a few yards that he estimated would come out. And that would increase the draft down to 2.5 to maybe 3 feet right alongside the dock, something like that, which would then give it a little bit of time. You know, give it some room. If it filled back in a little bit over time, you know, you'd still have some pretty good draft there.
Has it ever been dredged?
That was, yeah.
I'm sure it's never been dredged along the center dock. I mean, that hasn't been in there that long, what, 10 years or so, 10, maybe 15 at the most years. I think it was just plunked in. The main ramp, that's been changed a number of times over the years, redone. I don't know if the sand has ever been pulled back into the hole or not. If it has, it certainly wasn't very often. I mean, as long as I can remember, and I've been out here since '73, that hole has been there. I think it's come and gone over the years, probably. You know, and it may have been scooped back in. Some of that sand can simply get put back in the hole. And as we had discussed before, it may help somewhat to put some signs up prohibiting power loading. That's not going to stop it all by any means. But maybe just as a reminder to people that to not do it, because they're kind of really wrecking their own launch there, the people that use that. But it would sure help to whatever extent they wouldn't power load, because that just blows the sand right back. So not only does it create a hole that makes it harder to launch a boat, because as you put the trailer in, it tends to go in the hole, especially a longer one. But then, of course, all that sand is out to sea and right pretty much by the end of the dock. So you get your boat in, and often then you'll hit just trying to get it out. And if there's a wind out of the south or the southeast, it can be a kind of a hassle getting your boat out. You know, from where you're trying to maneuver and because you really can't drop your engine that much to get much bite to get yourself out away from it. If there's a wind. If the wind's out of the northwest, then you just sit there and let it blow you out, and not a problem. But
You recall what the price of that dredging operation was going to be?
seems to me it was around 10 grand, wasn't it?
Yeah, if we did it in the winter months, it was
Yeah.
estimated to be about $10,000 to do it, which about,
And I think that was with the city doing the
with the
hauling
city
on that.
doing the hauling. So we'd have to, look in the permitting and then
Right.
where would be an approved deposit site.
Yes.
And there was some information in the permit from several years ago that I believe we could look into that same location. So those are a couple of pieces of the equation we still would have to determine.
I don't remember that there was any concern about the hazardousness of what was going to be taken out. It was just a matter of, it was more paperwork than anything else. Saying, all right, here's what it is, here's where we're going to dump it, we'll check to make sure there's, no contamination in there, I don't know why there would be, but, and then just dumping it in. And if it was timed right in the wintertime when there wasn't a snowfall or something like that, then Dave's guys probably would have time to do it, and they've got the trucks and so forth. So that seems to me that was going to save a fair bit if they didn't have to truck it out, because really it's just an operator with a backhoe, and I think they estimated the better part of a week to get the whole thing done. And I think they would, width-wise, it was going to be what, maybe 15 to 20 feet total width, and of course some of that thing is taken up by the dock put in. One consideration then would be that when the docks are put in next year, the feet would just need to be a little lower. On the center dock, those posts are plenty high enough anyway. They could easily just go down a little further. Seems to me on the ramp docks, those might need some extensions. We'd have to look at it and see, but that's not a big deal just to get the dock back up to the right level, But anyway. So.
Okay, thank
All right, well, thanks very much. Again, anything I can do to help, but glad to, and it should be great to get that done. And in talking with that contractor, he felt it would hold for quite a while. He couldn't say for sure, it depends on the water currents, but the predominant wind is out of the northwest, and so it tends to blow stuff out rather than in. Not all the time, but he felt it would last some reasonable time. Might have to be done again another 10 years or something, but he didn't think it'd be like 2 years. We don't want to do it if that's all it's going to be, but so.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a contractor's report from back then that could be looked at, or with a recommendation? Did it have any details?
I think when Kathy and John had met out there, it was just to take a look to see what the options were. So
Okay.
we didn't get into great detail. It was more, we could do it in the summer and it's going to be twice the cost, or he recommended doing it over the winter months. So we can keep that moving forward if you wanted to put together a formal recommendation on what to do and an actual bid for that as we're looking at, the winter approaching in the next few months. So.
Perfect.
And Jane, am I right that you'd already done some work on the permitting, not necessarily getting in, but I think you looked at it all, and was
Yep.
it amending a current permit?
Yep, so I did contact the DNR, and there was an existing permit for a similar project from several years ago that they found, and I have that information, and they thought that it would just be amending that permit, should be able to get us what we would need, so we just have to provide the information on what area we want to dredge and get that amended. So not an expensive cost to do that, so I think that's all squared away. It's just a matter of getting the contractor back in, communication with us and getting that looked at a little further and pursuing that with Parks Commission for this winter.
Perfect.
Do we need a motion on that? To move forward with getting?
Nope, I can get some numbers,
Great,
and
thank
yep, we
you.
know it'll be about the $10,000 range, and planned on looking into that as with when the ice, when it's good solid ice. I know last year we had a small window where it remained, really cold to do that, so I know we'll have to be ready so that as soon as we can get them out there and get the work done.
The backhoe would actually go down through the ice, it won't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's just not going to be a little wet on the ice. But he would just pull it out and, I suppose throw the ice off to the side, we get that out of the way. It would be pretty simple.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so we'll be moving on now to our regular agenda. First off will be the Forest Lake Area Pickleball Club approvals. Jamie, if you could start us off with this.
all right. This evening we're seeking approvals from the Forest Lake Area Pickleball Club that is formed in the community. Resident Denny Johnson spoke of that a little earlier. The group he referred to as up to about 190 individuals, which is pretty impressive. So they've actually had some volunteers and have a steering committee, which is great. And I think they're continuing to encourage new people to join their forces. So with that, they're looking at using some of the funds that were donated, as he had mentioned, to add a storage container and a practice board out at the pickleball court. So included in your packet is a little information on that this evening. Just like everything else, we want to make sure that Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission approves of these additions out there, making sure you have all the information needed. The storage container is something that they did purchase, and it has all the specifications and information. They will have this locked, and the intent is mostly for individuals, part of this club, where it will have extra paddles and balls, different things they need to store. They will be managing that and unlocking it during their hours that they gather to play, and it's just really an opportunity to have some extra equipment on hand if people don't have that. It looks like that would be stored within the pickleball court area, and they would like to bolt this to a fence post, and they plan to remove it during the winter months. I actually did see the storage container, and it is pretty durable, so I don't know if it, maybe Denny can speak if it needs to be bolted to the fence or not, or if it's sturdy enough to remain within there, or if there's some concerns about it being of theft or someone taking that away. So that's the storage container. They also are interested in a practice board, which you'll see in your packet. There was one update to this since the memo was created, but it looks like they're looking to do, just on the south end of the pickleball courts, a practice board, which you can see is a board it's actually going to be 2 feet by 8 feet. and it's made of 3/4 inch thick marine plywood with an aluminum cap. So the purpose of this is just to give people the opportunity to warm up or practice, and should only be used when the adjacent courts are not being in use. So there's not that risk of safety concerns if a ball runs in, goes into a court where people are playing. This again is something that would be purchased by the Forest Lake Area Pickleball Club, and they're just looking for approval on that this evening. So with that, I'll turn over to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission to see if you have any initial thoughts, questions, or comments on this request.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. I definitely personally am in favor of the storage container. I think that'll work perfect for what they have for their needs. I know we've done the same thing for Baseball Association where they have a few containers behind the backstop at some of the sites out at Cooling Camp. I'm definitely in favor of that. The practice boards, I know the picture that was shown was a very simple photo created by the club. Do we know what the specifications will be? Is it going to look just like that, or do we want to make it the full length of the fence like we currently have at Belts Park? Which one would suit the pickleball club better? And you guys might be able to answer that better than anyone, so.
Actually, Gary should be here to talk to that, because he's the one that's, the one that he's talking about, that we want to put up there, is actually 4 by 8 feet.
Okay.
rather than 2 by 4.
I see.
2 by 8. But, and it would be set on some legs to support the board itself.
I see.
And then attach it to the fence. And I forget, there's a couple of ways. We could put some 2 by 6s on each side of the fence to hold it up to the fence, or we could actually bolt it onto one of the fence posts.
Mhm.
It's kind of the technique that we're talking about.
Perfect. Yeah, one of my biggest thoughts is with the windscreen that we have there, we don't want to go through the windscreen. And so if we were to take off a section of the windscreen, you might have a lot of wind going around that specific board. So that's just my only thought of, would it be better to have the full length board from the bottom of the court to the top of the fence to block off the wind or something? That's something we can look at, so.
One issue with having something solid there is that it is a solid and it's a sail and will
Yeah.
capture wind and start to destroy the integrity of the fence.
Yeah.
So you really want something that's a little bit smaller rather than bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
And when we take down that windscreen, it's gonna stay on the court, right? It'll be dropped down and rolled up to the center.
That's the plan for the windscreen,
Right.
and then this practice board the intent is to have it removed for the winter and stored in someone's, have someone will store that at their property. So that's the initial plan. I think we would have to work with them on the installation so we aren't jeopardizing the integrity of the windscreen and handling that properly. So I think that's just one piece we would want to think about. And I think the playing season this year is wrapping up fairly soon, within the next month or so. So I don't know if the storage container is an immediate thing, and then we work through a little bit more on the practice board, so it's up in the spring next year. So we're not putting it up for a month and then winterizing it. Maybe that would make sense, as a, I didn't know any information about the posts on the ground and what that would entail. So we want to make sure that, that all will be okay and no safety hazards or anything there as well. So maybe that's a consideration, is postpone that piece of it till the spring, so we aren't putting it up for about a month and then having to have the city or somebody work on the winterization piece of that component. So that's just one thought regarding the practice board.
I have a couple questions in a direction that I'll go on a tangent with. The debris that you have on the courts, leaf litter, what kind of debris? Could a blower work to blow that off?
Yes.
Okay, do we have access to electrical outlets somewhere in that vicinity? Because my thought process being cordless blower, we've used them on the golf courses to clear debris off in the fall. You get the samari seeds and the elm seeds in the spring, and you just have a little cordless blower and you blow your path from where you're putting to the cup. If the groups that were playing pickleball would just charge that while they're playing, it would be ready to use by the next group. They'd blow the courts, they'd go charge it while they play pickleball, and then they could put it in the locker. And the locker will be locked inside the locked court, right? I'm just thinking outside the box here. Would that make sense?
It would make sense if we got power out there.
I know there are some electrical outlets in the vicinity, so we'd have to just test those and make sure they're working.
Yeah.
Are they anywhere near the pickleball courts?
I know there's one near that does not work, and I know I was told there's another one. I can't speak because I've never seen it myself, but was told there's another one fairly close by. So I would just want to test that myself and confirm and let you know.
I know it's a drag to have debris on the courts, and it would be a lot easier than push brooms and,
Yes.
Yeah, and it's got like the little kids park there,
The rubber mulch.
Rubber mulch.
Yeah, I think that
Oh,
would
they-
come up with the,
Yeah.
cut the grass,
Mhm.
comes into one of the courts. but-
yeah, that would blow out of there real quick, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just thinking, okay, thanks.
And if you come play pickleball, we'll show you how, so.
I-
Come on up anytime. You're
I'll
open
be
from
there.
7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week.
Okay, I'll be there. Soon, next year.
I also have just one question on the practice board. Could a person do something, you know, like how you play air hockey, you have when you're playing air hockey, you have the holes that go through a board to make it less of a wind sail? And I mean, the holes would be kind of fairly small, but you could still see your practice board to where maybe that might work too.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Like no weight,
Like a light, yeah, like a light, you know, weight light, yeah,
lift, be lighter,
yeah.
wouldn't capture the wind. It's a good idea.
So a question I have for the pickleball club, are you still looking to install these things this year, or is this something now that we're looking at for springtime next year?
Well, the storage shed we want to be using, we've got it there, and it's actually just sitting on the surface right now, it's not attached to anything. And it's probably late enough in the season that we probably won't bother to attach it this year. But, and I don't think we've got any wind storm issue kind of things that are gonna be coming up to having to deal with any. Because we got a sandbag at the bottom of the thing to keep things stable at this point.
Perfect.
I don't think, right now, we're too concerned about it getting legs and walking away.
Perfect. For me personally on this, I would want to approve the storage locker tonight, and I would like to see a design plan for the board before we install that next spring, personally, deciding how we want to fasten it to the fence properly.
X.
That's
Maybe.
my opinion.
Yeah.
So, do you have any feedback?
So are you
Making a-
approving a board but not the installation, or are you moving that we wait to approve until you?
My
What's
opinion
your
is
thought?
that we would just wait to approve the board part, knowing that it's most likely we will be. We just want to see a final plan of how we're gonna fasten it and everything before we approve that construction of it. So, any other discussion? All right, I'm gonna make a motion then. I will make a motion that we will approve the storage container for the pickleball club at the pickleball courts, and that is all I will be approving at this time. That's it.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? And that passes. Thank you, and we'll be working with you very soon on just finalizing the board and how we'll make that work. I'm very confident we'll have something as soon as the snow lifts. So there we go. Thank you. Next will be the Fenway Land Exchange.
Chair, members of the commission, good evening. This was previously discussed at your workshop just to discuss the potential for a land exchange that the city has been discussing with Mr. Pratt. As you're aware, Mr. Pratt owns this current approximately 9-acre parcel here adjacent to Fenway Fields. This is Field 5, parking facilities, and this is that parcel. It's bisected by some wetlands, but there are some good upland areas, and we'll show you some concepts for what that could look like in a developed condition to be an extension of Fenway Fields. Property is currently zoned industrial. As you're aware as well, this area is owned by the city, and in the original Headwaters PUD was established as the Woodland Preservation Area. A few years ago, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission had brought forward an idea about the potential for a dog park on that location. At the time, the council had indicated that their preference was to retain it for future development, but we weren't necessarily going to be marketing it at this time. Mr. Pratt is the owner of this parcel here, which you can kind of see outlined in red. And this is the site of what used to be referred to as the Walker Methodist Development, which was an assisted living and kind of skilled nursing facility development that never did come to be, but he has a potential user now that is moving through the process to develop the site into about 45 units of multifamily housing, which this is zoned multifamily, this parcel here. Mr. Pratt is really kind of a leader in the marketplace for these one-level villa townhomes, and he'd like to do that in the rear for approximately 14 units there, 12 to 14 units. And this will be a public road going through the site. We have asked, and this is just for illustration purposes, realistically, this plan is subject to future development. That's really not what the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission would talk about in terms of what the development piece of this would look like. And the council did provide some feedback on that last evening in terms of road orientations and things like that. But this does just show how you could ghost plat the property, the remaining city property, and how it could be developed. It also could be developed in other ways. I mean, you could carve this section off here, and it could be also integrated into the Fenway complex for future development or recreational trail or whatever, that story can be written at a later date. What we're looking for this evening, though, is really just some definition from the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission on their thoughts on whether they like the idea of the land exchange from a Fenway Park perspective. One of our EDA commissioners, Commissioner Finneman, has developed a couple of concepts for what this might look like, and so this is the piece that would be exchanged to the city. This is a more robust development, and I think the commission has seen this and actually has quite a bit more development in the Headwaters or in the Airport Industrial Park area. But focusing on this, there potentially, if you can work with the school district here, which this is just a gravel parking lot right now, there's a potential for another turf field here, another combined parking field here, another turf field, and then three ball fields. There's some encroachment into the airport areas. That's probably a difficult obstacle to overcome, but again, as you go into development, you can get a better understanding of some of those issues. With that in mind, we did just ask for, what does a concept look like that doesn't encroach on any of the adjacent properties or the airport property, or it presumes that maybe you can't work out something with the school district, with their existing ground lease for the ice arena facility, and still has a couple of nice turf fields and a couple of nice ball fields with just a minor encroachment into that woodland preservation area. So overall, I think there's a lot of potential for Fenway. As I look at it from a park development perspective, I think this is advantageous for us, to be considering. Realistically, at some point in the evolution of Forest Lake as a community, we are going to need more ball fields and more turf fields. If soccer comes back and has a stronger presence than what they do today, as lacrosse continues to expand, certainly this area, is a good way to expand that without having to develop a next complex with the next set of parking infrastructure and the next set of, management, philosophy and all that has to go into that. So I guess really looking for the commission's feedback and ultimately a recommendation to the city council on whether the commission supports the land exchange or if you have any other feedback along those lines. So I have Mr. Pratt here, who is the developer that we're working with, if you have any questions. And I'm happy to stand for your questions or defer to your discussion.
All right. Mr. Pratt, would you like to say anything on this project before we discuss?
Well, I appreciate Aaron's done a great job putting it in a quick summary. In earnest, where I think this comes from, if you look at the site, there's approximately 3 acres there, 3 acres, but that translates into 12 home sites, if you count them. 12 home sites. The raw land underneath a home site is probably worth a good day, maybe 20 grand, something like that. So 20,000 times 12, about $240,000 worth of, without getting all the engineering and all that down, just rule of thumb. So what the city gets in exchange is, depending on which plan you use, ball fields. Not that, not that, that's a big deal, I guess, but if you look at the land necessary to do that, adjacent to now what is parks, or excuse me, fields and hockey and all that, it seems to me to make sense. I have proposed 3 different uses on the industrial property. None of them actually got approved here, and not going backwards, but looking forwards. This idea of an exchange seems to make sense. I'm not lining my pocket with, what am I doing here,
Right.
It's just enabling, I think, today, market-driven, better use, helping this move along, get it developed, get something the city can use, and get something that I can use and move forward. I spent some time here today walking through the woods and around the woods, and I have some feelings a little bit from yesterday, whether or not, the woods and how much of it should be used or whatever. My position is, for discussion here, if you put your pen where that drive going out into the site is, right there, excuse me, where
The
I've
end of
got
it.
my cul-de-sac there, then there's a road that extends kind of
Right.
right there.
There.
Okay. Now you'll see a trail that goes right there, out. I'm telling you what, the mayor talked about getting access to that land there because there was a limit of, how you could get vehicle or traffic access to that site. Well, let's say that we took that little road and we have a parking area there for guests, for city to come. Just simply a passive, for now, I said for now, trail. It'd be spectacular, and whether you develop later some other ideas, but just having that trail in there, to me, made a lot of sense after visiting the site. Okay? Spectacular woods, okay? Open it up, you could run a trail, maybe, that concept goes around the wetland. Maybe you have walked around that wetland, I have today, and it's very pleasant, kind of a natural setting, to get basically back up into the hockey arena area, the ball field, from the development that is occurring there, all of it. I mean, people working and living there can walk there a little more of a shortcut of sorts. So it seemed to make sense to me, and we need your blessing here to move forward, I guess, on it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right.
I like the exchange, but I also hold dear that woodland preserve because it is an incredible forest.
Yeah.
And I guess I would like to see scratching the potential future development off of there and remove those dotted lot lines. And as Mr. Pratt said, enhance a trail system through there. We can use the north section to bump out and have 2 legitimate ball fields, not worry about encroaching upon our own property. That's my opinion, because I mean, we're Forest Lake. Yeah, we have a lot of trees around here, but that's kind of a hunk of forest.
So Chair, Members of the Commission, certainly that's something you could include in a recommendation. You could, make a motion for approval of the land exchange or supporting the land exchange with the suggestion that the remainder of the property remain as a woodland preservation area. There are going to be some some actual constraints to how this might develop ultimately, because your sewer reach here really is probably going to limit what you can do here without putting a lift station in. So you've kind of taken this part, it works from that perspective, from a sewer perspective, but you start getting too far into here, and the practical side of that is for the amount of lots you're going to pick up, it's probably not going to be worth a lift station. So this very well, from a practical perspective, could be done that way. When we talked to Mr. Pratt about it, though, just realizing there's lots of perspectives on woods versus development, we at least wanted to show that there was a path, if there was a decision made in the future to develop it, that it wouldn't be boxed out by the way this site laid out, as well as being able to access it, because here you have wetlands and here you have wetlands, and very difficult to provide access to the balance of the property if it's not preserved in some way from here. So that was really the impetus of that, but that's not something we're conveying to Mr. Pratt or talking about with Mr. Pratt right now. Might not be something we ever talk to him about. Just really trying to understand what the options are, though.
Yeah.
So on the land that we would exchange, is it all, how do you get to the east side of that? Is it only off of the vacated 200th Street, or is it all wetland all the way across, or no?
No, the previous development proposals, have envisioned, and with a field use, you have some flexibility. So if you look at how the concept options play out, you might kind of have a pedestrian way kind of through here. Could be boardwalked, could be, slight bridges, depending on how you do that. Probably boardwalked, though. You see that in some park settings. So that'd probably be how you access it and keep with the parking fields in the primary core of the area. I really do think as you develop this part of the property, though, you are going to have to, really engage, this second set of parking here just to really provide for the development that might happen here. Certainly working with the school over here, there's a lot of opportunities, and I think that are mutually beneficial. An improved parking condition benefits the arena as well as whatever future development might happen here. So I think that's a good conversation for us to have with them.
Can I interject one thing? After walking around out there, Karen, I've got a picture here. Right now, if you look at the concept plan again with everything on it, I want to show this. If you can get that back up there.
The other
Oh, yeah, sorry.
colored one?
Okay. This, this is you've got a paved surface there, now. People, they were riding bikes there today, but, that's the sort of thing where you can get equipment out there, you can wheel it in. I don't know, I understand that it's a vacated road, and I understood that the airport commission had a big say in this, but that is clearly, that section of road right there is on either property that I own or that the city owns. It's not airport commission land. They could, I think, just extend that trail there, paved.
That's very correct, yeah. So that'd be another way, if you could park down here, would be to come through this way.
You could park there, and get access to it. There is access right along between the baseball field and the hockey rink to this parcel. That's there, okay? And I'm thinking with that here, so we extend that asphalt down all the way along here because it's not interfering with airport commission at all. So you've got some circulation there. some thought given to how people get in and out of here with their equipment.
And that would be accessible for handicapped or others to be, whatever the solution is, if we exchange this land and we develop it there, we would have a solution that would be accessible to all.
Yeah, this is, so you can see this paved trail
Yep,
exists.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, well, you guys live right over there, so.
Yeah,
So
But-
that could just be extended up to here. That's one option. Another option, if the center of gravity is gonna come through here, would be to try to boardwalk through here. But in either condition, ADA is something you have to, be cognizant of,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, because I know once you get on that dirt, it's very difficult with a wheelchair or whatever else you may have. So I just
What-
wanted to make sure that was covered.
What you can't do is go through this part of the property. That's the subject to airport zoning and part of the airport layout plan. And so this, and I'm not gonna say people don't walk their dogs there and do things there, but realistically, and that was the original dog park proposed location was over here. But at some point in time, this has been designated as part of the flight path for the airport. And we actually tried to put a full trail through here. We received funding from the DNR through the local trails grant program and had to reroute that because MnDOT Aeronautics would not approve the connection through here. So instead, we ran it down 202nd and then Goodview. Originally, we weren't gonna go on Goodview. We were just gonna go here and then connect through to Fenway all the way. But, so this is off limits unless something changes from a regulatory perspective, but certainly a lot of options here.
And then when looking at this picture, when you talked about expanding the parking, where was that? Yeah, it's harder to see on this picture.
Yeah, so in this iteration, this would be a little bit of an expansion kind of behind Field 5 here. So it'd be 65 stalls potentially here. This gravel lot really is kind of isolated right now and not particularly accessible to the public the way it's set up. If you noticed for a while there was a bunch of school buses when they were redoing their bus garage and things like that. So I think that's a legitimate conversation to have is how can we connect the existing lot from the ice arena to maybe develop this better. I think it would work for the users of the sports center as well as whatever might happen over here. But those are the two areas. That's the more of the limited development concept. So the more robust concept would actually have, the parking here and then some field development. But this is a newer, larger parking field here, so.
Speaking of EDA, if I'll just jump in to answer your question there, I'm going to show you that this trail right here where it ends. And it ends, you can see the baseball field here. There's parking there and a turnaround there, around, kind of a turnaround. That pavement, if I can hold this up for you. This pavement, this is the dark area that I've got here illustrated. That sign, that's right here, that's right there. You just extend the pavement down here to this trailhead. And you, in theory, ADA, you could get into both of these fields to play and perhaps into that trail. See, it's there. You've got a drive lane and you can place to drop them off and a place to get on, onto the trail there. Another positive thing, I think, to thinking through this all.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank
Back
you.
to Hardwood Trail.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
This, Aaron is the commissioner again, go ahead.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah, okay.
Is, one question I have is the wetland that is right where your mouse is, was that a man-made wetland or was that?
No, that's a historical drainage area.
That's
so-
historical drainage?
Yeah, it is. It is in the National Wetlands Inventory. I mean, it hasn't been delineated, of course, but when they did an assessment a number of years ago, you can kind of see from a regulatory perspective, these are the wetland areas. So that's usually like your starting point for the discussion. If you're really going to do anything in and around those, you might need to get a delineation done and better evaluate that. As we look at development, another thing that would probably speak to the more limited development plan is the watershed district will likely want some more buffer around these than what currently exists in the agricultural condition right now. So in the ideal world, the watershed district, if you're gonna come in, moving some dirt, they would like to see 50 feet around the existing wetlands for buffer area. So that's a consideration. You can see the pocketed wetlands too within this area as well.
So one question I have is if on the wooded land where your mouse is also, could a person switch wetlands from one side to the other? And then it'd be more of a use for fields and that pond or wetland inside the woods, that would be a walking trail also, and it would only be moved for a little bit?
You can, certainly the process for that is laid out in the Wetland Conservation Act. What we would have to do there, you have one of two options. One is you could, replace this on a usually the minimum will be a 2-to-1 basis. So if you've got, 2 acres here, let's say you'd have to put 4 acres of wetland in here, which would involve taking out all the woods, developing seeding. We did do mitigation on site when we developed this area for the airport. It's not as easy as you think to go through, create wetland, and then you go through this monitoring period of about 3 to 4 years where the Watershed District and whoever is responsible for the Wetland Conservation Act administration, you got to show that it's taken, and it takes some love and attention to get those things to move along. We really struggled over here to do that. So that is an option though, to replace. Another option is you can impact wetlands here and then mitigate them through the purchase of credits. And depending on the quality and the type of wetland, will dictate the cost of the credits. And so again, same concept applies if it's a 2-to-1 situation, or it can go all the way up to 5-to-1 depending on the quality of wetland you're talking about. You're buying credits in that amount, but it's wetlands that have been developed somewhere else. They also, though, when they look at these things, you just can't do it because you want to deal with it. They want to see, have you taken all steps to avoid it? Can you, kind of get by without doing it? And are the reasons economic, or, there's a lot of criteria that they'll evaluate there. So it can be done, but I'm going to say for what we're talking about here, probably more expensive than what we would probably be comfortable with.
Okay. So one of the thoughts I had, and I thought about this quite a bit last night, because I was at a city council workshop. One of the big concerns that they had was to get to the properties that are where the wooded area now, if that does move forward, is traffic to that area. If you can go back to that map. Is traffic to that area, and trying to figure out how to properly do that with only one way in and through a busy area. Trying to figure that out. And I know it kind of diminishes the entire potential park plan that was put together by the EDA member, but is there a way that we could potentially extend that road to the north into where FLA's or the parking lot sits? Let's say if you were to curve it just straight up and around. So go past 202 where the potential new road would be, through 202, and then curving into where FLA's parking lot is, if you understand what I mean.
Well, it's Fenway Fields parking lot.
Yes.
So
Correct.
Let's start with that.
Yep.
And then, sure, you can do that. Okay. But realistically, I think you have a couple negative things. One, that's a pretty expensive situation to be running, a road through there, given that condition. Especially if you're not really developing that, and if all you're really trying to do is create sort of this connection that way, it's pretty expensive. The other side of it is you're then at some point running a road right in the middle of the activity center of the park here.
So it wouldn't necessarily be there. It would be going north of 202 and into where the round circle is at Fenway. So if you went straight up and then curved around, yep.
Like here, like just kind of come up and punch it through here?
Yeah, punch it through there and then curve around. My only thought is, I mean, you'll then have a pretty, you could possibly then move the wetland to the triangle cone-shaped area. And that spot might work well if you had street parking for a potential dog park in the future. That's just my thought, and I know that we have fields and everything to look at, lawn, and, you know, quite a ways in the future. I was just wondering if that's a possibility of something to look at in the future.
I think it's physically possible, you know, from a regulatory perspective possible. I think financially it's not insignificant, depending on what you're trying to accomplish with the woods here. You know, there's that dimension. If you're going to create a residential neighborhood, you're running a bunch of traffic through it. If you're trying to preserve woods, you're running traffic through it. I think it is an option. This is sort of a used corridor connection, so you're creating a crossing over that. People oftentimes will, you know, run through here, actually all the way through to the Hardwood Creek Trail. So you're creating sort of a crossing point there. Not that that doesn't happen in places, just people got to be aware. But I think you'd have an option if you really did want to do it, but I think that's a lot of development to get back to a couple fields. And you have the ability to kind of work through the school parcel here and create some parking here. And not an uncommon situation, especially these would not be sort of like a field 5, a premier field. These would be sort of practice-like fields, and I think you have the ability to, you know, walk to some of that. Not uncommon to walk a little bit, but not appreciated either by people at times. So you got to kind of balance some of those things out.
And just to clarify, what I was mentioning is not that people would go through those neighborhoods to get to that new parcel, but where at Fenway Fields now, where that round, it's technically a roundabout maybe, if that would connect to the potential cul-de-sac just south of where your cursor is. So if you, something like that, or straight up and over, if that would ever be an option.
Yeah, it's an option for sure. Yeah, you definitely could do that. You know, you're introducing traffic. You're kind of bisecting the park with traffic at that point, but you know, it does provide you like if you're using it more as a drive lane, it would provide you like the opportunity for some on-street parking too. So, but certainly that is an option. You can definitely do that.
The other concern with that is then if you make the connection there for this neighborhood, they're going to connect through the neighborhood on the other side as a cut through potentially, which is going to increase the traffic on the neighborhoods that are west of that as well, which may be a concern.
I see. No, I understand what you're saying.
Something to think about.
So I think for this evening, you don't have to have the final thing designed in a plan. I think you just have to like the potential enough to proceed with the land exchange and preserve. It's really about preserving the option for the future, because you know this might sit for 5 years and be hayed, you know, and you know we're not necessarily feeling the pinch on turfed fields, or you know softball fields is getting to be a little bit more of a challenge because you know the school's taken some out with some of their access reconfigurations at the high school, but it's not budgeted, it's not built into the priority plan at this point, but it's just a unique time to, you know, allow Mr. Pratt to kind of do something that the market, you know, sees potential in down here, and at the same time preserve an option for a contiguous piece that would, at some point in our future, you know, be beneficial to Fenway Fields.
Can I ask one more really dumb question, being the new person here? Down here where Mr. Pratt, if he develops there, is there, with that development, is there a contribution to the Parks Fund or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Also an added bonus. So
Okay, thank you.
you'd have the 45 units here at $2,500 per, and then you'd have, how many is this, Len? It's
It's 21 now.
21. There we go.
Okay.
in speaking for citizen input only at the end, or I missed it at the beginning, or can you ask questions during the discussion?
It was mainly for the open forum, but I can, are you looking to talk to this topic?
I didn't come here for this, but this is near and dear to my heart. I'm the guy that pulled together 300 signatures for the dog park a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And so I've been interested in this area for a long time. And it sounds like we're proposing a swap of the wooded area for somewhere else over there. Is that my understanding?
That is correct, yes. So it's,
So I've looked at these maps before quite a bit, and I've been around the metro area, the dog parks, et cetera. That wooded piece of property is actually kind of special in that it's a beautiful piece of property. City's owned it for quite a while. It's paid for. It is, some people are already using it as a dog park or an extension of a dog park, walking on that road. I would hate to see the city lose a piece of treed land that could vary. Right now, if you go, for example, down to Otter Creek and you look at what they did for that dog park, they basically cleared about 30% of the trees and created trails. Same thing in Blaine. It makes for a wonderful space for the citizens. And Forest Lake doesn't have really anything else like that that's readily accessible. So again, I apologize for coming in this late in the game and, voicing my opinion. Maybe I should have been engaged in this earlier. But just as one guy who's been tracking this for a while, I would love to see us keep this.
okay, thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
And that could be an option if we make a motion here to do kind of along the lines with what Jack said, is making a recommendation to the council that the wooded area be preserved if possible.
The remainder of the
correct?
wooded area.
Right.
Make the exchange to gain the property for Fenway
Right.
Park and pull out the future proposal, although I appreciate that we don't have any say
We
in
don't
that.
have any say, but we could at
But
least
we
make
can
a
encourage it
recommendation.
and maintain the woodland preserve.
Yeah, so just for reference, the area that would be conveyed is this area, I mean, the area in red here is owned by Mr. Pratt right now.
Yep.
So can see that. The area that would be conveyed is eventually with some version of this area kind of in blue. The balance, if based on a recommendation, what the council ultimately decides could be preserved, could be further developed recreationally, however, whatever people see is most appropriate in the future, so.
More than likely because of the sewer system. It's kind of a dead-end deal right now.
Yeah, from a development perspective,
Yeah.
while this is laid in there as an idea, and again, this is not part of the area that's proposed for conveyance, your sewer, is gonna require a lift station before too long here, so it, practically speaking, it'd be a long time before this is really that marketable, And that might be, part of your recommendation is that this just gets added into the boundary of Fenway Field. I mean, that's another, Fenway Park, that's another option. And, then the thought process on it shifts a little bit, if that's what you're interested in.
And as a section of Fenway Park, we don't have to develop it.
Right.
Correct,
I kind of like that.
yeah, too.
I'm personally kind of torn between the two options. I definitely like the idea of building more homes and more infrastructure in Forest Lake. At the same time, I do not really want to lose the wooded area. It would be nice to know for sure if that property would be built out if the trade were to happen right away. I would hate to trade the land and then they realize it will not work for them in the wooded area, and then we have to kind of keep our paws off of it because it's not our land anymore.
So that is something
That
that
section.
we could
That section.
accomplish in an agreement. So we could, as part of the conveyance, we could definitely have something in there that said must be developed within blank amount of time, and otherwise there's a reversionary provision, or, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, if anyone else has any questions, if not, I think we'll be looking for a motion as a recommendation to the council of what we'd like to do.
motion that we move forward with the swap with Mr. Pratt for the new section in the Woodland Preserve area, and in the process redelineate the boundary of Fenway campus to include the remainder of the Woodland Preserve area, with a long-term intent making that, maintaining it as a preserve.
Second.
All right. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose, abstain, and that passes. All right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yep.
So, all right. So next, we will be moving on to our Fenway Park update. So, just as we start this discussion really quickly, I just want to explain to people in the community who are here, that I know this has been a big topic in the newspaper and on social media. Just wanted to explain why we are talking about FLA and the relationship we have from a maintenance standpoint with FLA is specifically we had clubs and different sports teams be concerned at the field conditions, and that is why it was brought to our attention and why we are reviewing some of the contracts and some of the different relationship we currently have with FLA and how we can just better it in the future. I don't think anyone up here on the commission thinks that FLA is a bad organization for the community. I think we all are very appreciative of what FLA has done for, kids and just sports in general in the area, and I think we all hope to continue that relationship. We just need to figure out this maintenance issue, as it seems like it has progressively became worse. So with that, Jamie, I would like you to just kind of give us an update at where we are, and then from there, unfortunately, we do not have someone representing FLA here tonight. Possibly just kind of going down the line and expressing what some of our concerns are, asking some questions, and then trying to figure out what we want to do from this standpoint moving forward. What are our next steps? So, Jamie?
All right, thank you. So again, just wanted to kind of reiterate a couple things that Tim had mentioned. The city's relationship with the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association has been a long-standing one and a positive relationship that I think we all do want to continue. For several years since the development of the Fenway Athletic Complex, the city has held a management agreement with FLA, Forest Lake Area Athletic Association. And in that, the city is granting the manager, which is FLA, the exclusive rights to manage and operate and do the maintenance of the athletic complex. So just wanted to make sure that relationship, it is Fenway Park, not FLA, which I think a lot of people in the community have that misunderstanding of what it is. It's Fenway Park. It's an athletic complex that's owned by the city. And again, there's a management agreement with FLA to manage and maintain the complex. So we did just have a renewal of the contract. We did look at it closely. The contract was renewed earlier this year, and the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission did approve a 3-year contract, given at the time there were no apparent issues or concerns. And again, as Chair Tim had mentioned, that early June this year, the Forest Lake Area Baseball Association approached the city with some concerns they had. They were not... They had some concerns regarding the safety of field number 5. So that's when the city had to step in to take a look at that. There were some attempts to work directly with FLA and with our Fenway Advisory Board Committee to bring the issue forward, and it has been discussed. But again, there were some concerns of being able to get the field back into condition that it needed to be so it can be playable next season. So just over the last few weeks and months, we've just kind of been reviewing some of the maintenance out at Fenway. So included in your packet, I did add, this was discussed at the City Council workshop last evening, and I think the recommendation was to bring it back to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission where it originated, to continue reviewing this and seeing how we can better partner with FLA to make sure that not only is the maintenance met to our city standards, similar to what we would do at Lakeside Memorial Park and other parks in the community, but also making sure that it's managed and maintained properly per our agreement. So in your packet, which was on the city council packet last evening as well, you'll see we have some budget reports that we received from FLA, and we also did send a letter to. So another point of clarification is, and confusion amongst people in the community or in general, is that the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association is run by President Al Hauge. So he's been working with the city for quite some time. You'll see here on page, let me just get to the page number here really quick. Page 4 of your packet, I inserted the staff memo that City Administrator Aaron Parrish shared last evening. So I think if we want to look that over a little bit, you can skip some of that information. Fenway Fields discussion. He had stated Fenway Fields is a park owned by the City of Forest Lake and operated by Forest Lake Area Athletic Association. And a copy of the agreement's attached. Again, it's FLA maintains and programs the fields at no cost to the city, but they do retain any revenue generated through field and rental and concessions. The city retains responsibility for capital improvements in the irrigation system. We contract them for maintenance of the irrigation system with Blue Diamond. FLA contracts with Blue Diamond for approximately $70,000 per year for programming and maintenance. Al Hauge is the president of FLA and the owner of Blue Diamond. So I think those are just some points of clarification, and really this is about the maintenance we're looking at with Blue Diamond as the contractor. They're a landscaping company that FLA has hired to do the maintenance at Fenway. So you'll include here in this memo some of the issues that we've become aware of recently regarding the maintenance. The parking lot landscaping, I know there was some miscommunication of that, whether it was, it's not clearly stated in our agreement of who was responsible, but the city is taking ownership of that. I know that there was also on the budget report regarding their contract that maybe FLA had mentioned something about landscape in the parking lot. So it was just an area of miscommunication, so the city has taken on and immediately improved any issues in the parking lot. Furthermore, you can see the Field 5 infield, which we discussed. We had a sports turf specialist out there to review it and provided a professional report, which is also included in this packet tonight. The city, along with the Forest Lake Area Baseball Association, did invest a significant amount of money to redo the infield on Field 5 about 4 years ago. And the professionals that we had out there stated, it was in the current condition due to lack of nutrients and water supply and being maintained properly. Otherwise, they feel that the infield would have thrived a little bit better. The conditions were there for that to happen had it been maintained properly. There's also aeration. The city used to do this role. New in the agreement this year, it is the manager's responsibility, which is FLA, and so that did not get completed this year. So the city did move forward with taking care of that. Fertilization, prior to September of this year, the fields had only been fertilized once with the incorrect application, where best management practices state you should fertilize 3 to 4 times a year. The city hired an independent contractor to fertilize just last week. Irrigation, again, is something that the city holds a separate contract with Blue Diamond for. So it's outside of FLA, it's just a contract with Blue Diamond. And despite being told, we're having irrigation working, the city's identified significant damages to the irrigation system and is now running a full audit to see what the total damage will be for that. But having a properly running irrigation system is critical to having good turf at a complex like that. Additionally, there's some storage bins that the city originally had approved, but they were much larger and aesthetically not different than what we were expecting. And so there's one there that had been requested to move in mid-April that's still on site today. So we're working with FLA to see when that can get moved. A couple other things, material piles. There's been some pulverized black dirt that was delivered in April that's still sitting on site, so they're working on getting that relocated and consolidated. City staff and I know members of Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission have done a walkthrough and have seen garbage cans completely full at the beginning of a sporting event, which obviously then really results in garbage we've seen in the drain sewage tiles, and also just litter throughout the complex. And the bathrooms have been noted with lacking supplies and cleanliness issues there. We did receive a maintenance plan from the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association on August 29th, which we had requested. We reviewed that at our August 30th Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, and I think when we turned it over to the commission, I think Jack had some comments on that, given his professional experience in turf management and those best practices. And the records, we've received fertilization records. I know we did request all maintenance records from Blue Diamond and have yet to receive those. So those are just some of the current issues that we're experiencing from the maintenance side. And again, this is where this originated, and we're just looking into our maintenance issues because obviously our number one priority is safety. Since this has come up, we've also had an independent contractor hired to reseed, aerate, reseed, and irrigate field number 5 infield, and it's looking great. It's getting in, grass is starting to grow through, colors coming back from the fertilization. So we feel like from helping out and trying to get things resolved, I think we're going to be in a good position for playability next season. But I think there's just some other concerns for moving forward on the continued maintenance of the complex. So with that said, I know Tim wanted to turn it over to Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission members to express any comments or questions. You'll also see this evening, I can pull up some pictures that were also shared with the City Council last evening, just from some of it being irrigation. I'll just get through the contract. Okay, so again, this is a letter that we did send to the Athletic Association dated August 17th. Some of these items are still with outstanding. And these were just some pictures to kind of show the landscaping has been dead for the whole season. A lot of excessive weeds, and then not really pictured here, but within the complex, you'll note, 6 or 7 dead trees within the complex. These are just some of the items that we had brought to the FLA's attention. You have garbage down the disposal, and again, the storage containers that we're looking to have one of them relocated. These pictures were just September 1st, but this first one is the warning track right here. This was sprayed about 2 weeks ago and hasn't gone away yet. So the whole warning track is about 80% grass on some of the fields when it's supposed to be just dirt and egg, just the egg lime. So there's some concern with that. This picture is sideways, but you can kind of see how much there's a lot of excessive weeds in the warning track. And these were just some of the irrigation damages that the City of Forest Lake had identified recently on September 1st. So this was just one of the zones. There's 55 zones in the irrigation system. And one of the zones, the whole zone was not working. So City of Forest Lake had repaired that. So just some maintenance concerns that we do feel that need to be addressed in order to make sure that the complex can be as best as it can be moving forward, and trying to just work with FLA on what that best solution might be. So with that, if anyone from the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission has any comments or questions, you do have a copy of the agreement, and tonight might be a good idea to just go through that and see if we're compliant and where we're at with the current agreement. Again, City Council last evening is looking for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission to come up with a solution for the maintenance of Fenway moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. Like I said earlier, unfortunately, no one is here representing FLA this evening, which is kind of disappointing, because I'm sure we all have several more questions than what was highlighted at our workshop that we had. Probably the best way to explain all of our concerns is probably just go down the line, and maybe I can start with Jason. And after everything that you've heard and that you might have viewed, what are some of the concerns that you have, and thoughts of everything?
I guess just as a Flood with the kids, and Flood does a great job with the kids and how they're doing their sports. Thank you for doing that. But for the field, excuse me. I got that horse in my throat. I don't know a lot about sports, but looking at, when we were out there looking at the fields and how everything was overgrown and things were not properly taken care of, it looks like we need to have some different action to take to make this one of our premier parks. So I think that looking at all the things that need to be done, I think we need to kind of look at some different options.
Perfect. Jack?
Last winter, we went through a big process, the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission, a little workshop action in here, and we rated our prioritized parks. Some parks lesser, other parks greater priority. And Fenway Park was right up there, one of our top 3 premier parks. When it was a designated premier park, Jim Blake and I were placed upon became liaisons with Fenway and Flaw.
But don't choke, okay?
Thanks.
And so Jim and I went out to the park a few times together and separately. And combined, we have conservatively, I don't like to give my age, but combined, we have about 80 years of professional experience in turf management between the two of us. Mine, way over 30 years in golf course management. And I know that quality turf takes a lot of effort and a lot of TLC. And walking around Fenway last summer, I was very distressed, very disturbed because of all the flaws in that park. And it's a premier park for our city. And we have witnessed a lot of changes on the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission over the past 18 months, and really progressive, really doing good. Look at Lakes, Memorial Park, beautiful, beautiful. But Fenway Park has really fallen. And I've sent letters, I've shared letters with Jamie, and I think they made their way to the council and other workshops with my concerns. We had that meeting, the extra workshop on the 30th of August, I think it was. Al was here. I kind of wish Al were here, but on the flip side, I'm glad that he's not here because I didn't want to, continue that discussion. I did share, and I'd like to enter into the record this additional copy. I felt, Jamie, whoever wrote that, just those 10 points that you just went through, boy, you were kind. It could have been much, much worse. Irrigation concerns, fertilization concerns, mowing concerns, weed management, trees, landscape, parking lot, cultural practices, safety issues, Field 5, the bathrooms, appalling. But we have challenges on the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission. Greatest challenge I have is the lack of financial records or documentation of what's been done on the campus over the past several years. Even though Al has been requested to provide this information, you don't know what you don't know. And we've worked hard to get the paper trail, the background, to either substantiate what's being done, and kudos, and okay, let's massage it, or to realize, man, what's being done out there? I hear the number $72,000 being kicked around. that, even if we are using a portion of that for scheduling, there isn't much money going into the management and of that turf grass. It's 27 acres, but the records we receive from True Green states that it's only 12 acres. And they're putting down the fertilizer and the weed application. A little disconnect here. I have concerns about that. If you follow the True Green paper trail, they have applied 1 pound of nitrogen to 12 acres of the complex over the last 3 years. I teach a class on best management practices for turf properties with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We use University of Minnesota guidelines, and just a simple from the hip, it's 3 pounds a year in this area. 3 pounds of nitrogen a year, and they applied 1 over the last 3 years. We should see 9 pounds. The fields, the property was fertilized late last week, and we're already seeing a nice response. I was on field 5 earlier today. We've got the grass coming up. The color is spectacular. The contractor did a super job. It's coming back. Grass grows in spite of what we do, but we have to give it a little TLC, a little bit of love. And it's been missing that love for a long time. Getting back to the dollars. Wow. 70-some grand. Where's money? Just where's the money? I'd love to see the breakdown. And that has not been provided. I appreciate that if we took over the whole project, the whole Fenway Park, scheduling, that could be a challenge for the park, or for the Parks, Lakes, Trails Commission. But I don't see that as too big of a hurdle. We've got some quality staff on board. There's software that can do that. We got a pickleball in, what, 4 months? How'd that work out? We can get things done, but we need the tools to do it. I just see some great solutions. Either the city takes it on themselves, or we pursue new contractors on maintaining the property, but we need to know what we don't know now, and those are the numbers. Where are the dollars? Because I don't know. Those are my concerns. Sorry, I was a little long-winded there.
No, not a problem. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Very briefly, clarifying point. Jack, just been around a long time, of course, like to support your point. Flaw's behavior here sounds very consistent with what happened with both ice arenas. They were very obscure with the numbers of the original ice arena. The school district got stuck with a bunch of maintenance. They took on a new arena, made a bunch of promises, put forward financials on the new arena, talked to the school district into taking it on. The numbers were misrepresented. I was involved in that process of getting the actual numbers exposed. It turned out that FLA never told the school district that they were behind in their monthly payments. They misrepresented how much work was going into the scheduling and what revenue was available. The district made the decision to take the ice arena out anyway, but the story you're telling about the application and management of financial resources with FLA in the field is 100% consistent with the behavior before. And in both instances, government agencies got stuck with the consequences of FLA's actions.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.
What? Okay.
More concerns now.
Yeah.
More concerns. Appreciate
I'd be
it.
happy to brief you on it
Yeah.
after the meeting. I can't stay too late tonight. This is really weird that I walked in this meeting. Two topics that are near and dear to my heart, but the district with the arena is another very interesting tale for those of you who are not here for it.
Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you.
So a question I have for Jamie, is there any maintenance that FLA is planning to do for the rest of 2017, or any more events that they still have planned, tournaments or anything that you know of?
I don't know of any of their scheduling. I've asked for just like a calendar or a list of scheduled events and tournaments, and I have not received anything in that nature all season. So I don't know, unfortunately, what their programming has been or when they have scheduled events out there, being that they have that management agreement and essentially do all the scheduling. The city has not received a list of events or tournaments. And at this time, I know they're Blue Diamond doing the maintenance. I don't know what their budget report indicates or includes for the rest of the season. I know that the city will be responsible for any additional irrigation yet this year and not moving forward with anything else with Blue Diamond for the irrigation piece. The city will complete our audit. We've gotten through about 40-some zones out of the 55 to see the current status of the irrigation system, and we're going to proceed with the winterization process of that. So I don't know what we can look at their maintenance schedule that they provided to see what else they do in October,
Okay.
November, December.
Jamie, quick clarification on that irrigation. You said that the city has gone through 45 of the 52 zones. How many of those zones were not functioning properly?
I believe there were over 30 zones that had issues identified.
30 zones out of the 40-some tested, out
Right.
of the 50 total.
Perfect. So some of the things we saw this year, notifications from the Baseball Association, and just going out to the field, you can understand their concern. I spoke with someone from lacrosse earlier today, who were having problems at the field. It was a junior high team. Girls lacrosse, the parents paid for seating out in the turf areas. And they were, because of the irrigation problems, which is what the parents were told. The specific parent who I talked to did not specify who told the lacrosse team that, but it was the city's irrigation issue, which is why some of the seeding or the turf was in disarray at the time. So a girls lacrosse team parents paid for extra seeding to put down on the field. By the time that they were done with their practices, they realized that the fields were not in the best condition for them, and they actually brought all of their home games for girls lacrosse to Scandia Elementary to play their games at Scandia Elementary this past school year, because Fenway was not working for them and was not a playable field. And they personally invested money, I'm not sure how much, but they personally invested money as parents to try to get the fields working in the correct order. At the same time, we've talked about trash issues and weeds around the property. I think definitely the irrigation issue is very big, with 34 spouts not working out of the 45 tested. I think that shows that almost 90% of them are not in working order whatsoever, which would cause a lot of these issues. One of the big things, aside from the maintenance part of it itself, looking at the Blue Diamond and the FLA agreement, and how do you separate Blue Diamond and FLA? Jamie, if you can pull up that budget item that you just had a second ago. This kind of breaks down a little bit of what. If you can scroll up just for a minute.
Okay, sure.
To the top.
To the very top.
Yep. So this is the Fenway Fields budget, and this is what Blue Diamond, I believe, charges FLA for the maintenance. Is this correct?
So you'll see here where at the top of the expenses, it says Blue Diamond Enterprise, mowing, fertilization, weed control, trim, etc. See below. So that is where last year $72,035 was paid to Blue Diamond, it looks like, from FLA, and that was actual at the end of October. And then 2017 budgeted amount was $73,710, and it was noted a fertilization increase of $1,675. So the $73,710 includes these items here below.
And when we look at some of these items below, when it's collect trash, maintain clean restrooms, all that stuff, I understand, would be covered under Blue Diamond being their maintenance provider, but also included in their contract is scheduling all tournaments, selling advertisement banners, working with, tournaments and stuff like that. I am not sure why we have a landscaping company scheduling tournaments for FLA. So that tells me that the company is receiving compensation. You know, it's a little bit messy in that area. You know, as Blue Diamond's supposed to be, for the most part, strictly maintenance. And it doesn't say anywhere in our contract that FLA cannot outsource their tournament setup and, you know, selling their advertisement. It's just interesting that they're having a landscape company do that for them. One of the big questions I have also is, does FLA have general liability insurance? Or does Blue Diamond have general liability insurance? Blue Diamond, Al Hauge mentioned to Jamie that Blue Diamond went from approximately 21 employees to just a few, and the only thing Blue Diamond now manages is Fenway Park. That's the only thing that Blue Diamond now manages. Questioning if they have all the insurance and licensing they need to be able to still perform the tasks at Fenway, I think it's very important to know. Does FLA have any employees? Their treasurer and their field maintenance, and anyone, does FLA have employees, or is that all done through Blue Diamond directly? Some of the things that we have asked for and we have not received from FLA is the Blue Diamond maintenance records, the FLA schedule of records, how often they have tournaments, how often are the fields used. We're unsure about that. One of the big things that I thought was kind of alarming is they're supposed to submit an audit report to us every single year on June 1st, and the last time FLA submitted an audit report to the city was in 2012. So that's over 5 years ago was the last time FLA submitted an audit report of the complex. Another thing in the agreement is it says any personnel under FLA needs to be a qualified personnel. I believe in talking, not personally, but with the city, talking with both the treasurer and some of the field maintenance personnel who work with FLA that we know of do not have any extensive background in either of those fields. So that's kind of a concern and also kind of breaks our agreement. And then, so those are quite a few big alarms that I have and many questions I have of things that I've noticed as I've been working with Jamie and kind of doing some of my own research. For me, I would personally like to see us potentially continue to work with FLA. I don't see Blue Diamond being a good fit to it. I also don't know from the little material we have so far from FLA or Blue Diamond how you're going to be able to separate the two at this point. I don't know how you're going to be able to separate FLA and Blue Diamond. It almost seems like the same company at this point. So what I would like to see is potentially working with FLA and possibly seeing if we can set up a workshop between all of our Parks, Trails, Lakes Commission members and the FLA Board of Directors, and discuss some of the concerns that we have and see if we can clarify some stuff, and then we'll see at that point if we would like to move forward with FLA from both maintenance standpoint and make sure that they're the best for the community to serve our park. I see this very similar as Castlewood, where we don't really have to worry about Castlewood. We have an agreement with them 3 years, like we do with FLA, to operate one of our city parks, as Castlewood's one of our city parks, and that relationship's perfect. And I'm hoping that we can work with FLA that some of these issues can be resolved. I'm hopeful of it. But we're gonna have to sit down with them and figure that out, so. Sir, I know you had a comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. I just Googled it, so Blue Diamond is owned by the guy who runs Flaw.
Yes. Yes,
Seriously?
so.
Okay.
So, Jamie, if you can just answer a quick question. We're gonna be contracting out someone from the city for our irrigation. How is that process started? Have we already done that?
We are going to, currently we've used somebody in Public Works, and just a point of clarification that the city has had an annual contract with Blue Diamond. It's separate from anything to do with our agreement with FLA.
Correct.
But we've always contracted with Blue Diamond Enterprises to run and maintain our irrigation system out there. So it's a separate contract. The city will either be using Public Works the rest of this year or begin a process to see who we would potentially contract with for next season.
Perfect. All right.
Can I ask one question? Is that irrigation contract money part of that 73,000, or is that different?
It's separate. The city, as it states in the agreement, I'll pull it up here really quick. It just basically states in our agreement here that the city is, the only thing the city is really responsible for is paying for the improvements for irrigation with the contractor of our choice. So we've chosen to use Blue Diamond. However, we're gonna look at some other options for next year. So that's in this language right here. And the supply, we also supply the water, which is pond water. So we have, an ample supply of that.
Jamie, I might suggest expediting that pursuit of a new irrigation contractor, because you need to have all those repairs made before you blow it out this fall, or you're gonna compound the issues next spring.
I'll be talking with Dave. We have a scheduled meeting for tomorrow, I believe, to start talking about moving forward on that.
Yeah, great.
Terry.
So I probably have more questions than I have answers. And Jamie, I was wondering if you could pull up that document you just had up, the budget document.
Sure. Just give me 1 minute here.
So one of the questions, as you're pulling that up, one of the questions that I noticed is that that document was updated in 2016. It's set in the lower left-hand corner. And it says down at the bottom, or on page 10, it says,
Okay, you want me to move up a little bit?
gosh, I can't see it with my
Let me
glasses
zoom it.
on.
Let me just zoom in here for you really quick.
Thank you.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Started that there was one application of fertilization that was put down.
For this year, there was one fertilization. The True Green records we received just stated one fertilization this year.
So this document is reflecting that there would be 4, if I'm reading that correctly, but only one was put down, and we have a cost of 70-some thousand plus. So was that based on one application, or one of the questions I'm wondering is, do we have the direction that was given to True Green when there was a cost that was estimated by True Green? So did True Green think they were only doing one, and that was the 75,000 was the result of that? Or did True Green think they were doing 4 applications and they dropped the ball and didn't do them? Do we have anything that reflects what True Green was instructed to do?
Unfortunately, we don't, just because of the agreement we have with FLA, and so that would be something that the FLA executives or FLA board would have to have worked through with Blue Diamond's, the contract that FLA carries with Blue Diamond. So that would be something between FLA and Blue Diamond to, I'm sure FLA has a copy of the Blue Diamond Enterprise contract for Fenway. I don't know if it's broken down more than what we see here or not. But those are great questions, because as we're given the task to review the maintenance and look at a recommendation for moving forward, I think that Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission members do need all of that information and more of a breakdown on where the expenses are going, so that we can look and see how can we potentially help with the maintenance out at Fenway. But I unfortunately don't have that information, and that would be a good question for the FLA board if we would move forward with a joint meeting as Tim had recommended.
Because it's hard to assess where the breakdown occurred. Is this an issue where they were given inadequate direction, or were they given the direction and they didn't follow through? I mean, those are some questions I have. It's a little bit like nailing Jell-O to the wall. It's hard to identify what direction was given and where the follow-through or lack of follow-through happened. I was also looking at the agreement, the management agreement. And I noticed on page 3, it does talk about the maintenance of the athletic complex. It is somewhat high level, right? It talks a little bit about such maintenance shall include, but is not limited to mowing, application of nutrients and herbicides. I'm wondering if there isn't value in having something a little bit more specific that outlines specifically from whoever is responsible, whether it be Blue Diamond, True Green, whoever it is, something specific from them that outlines what the applications are, not being familiar with, but what the pounds are, what the specifications are, so that there isn't the potential for miscommunication to occur. Because I think part of this, I don't know, is this, the left hand thought the right hand was doing this? Is this a situation where maybe it's a communication issue and assumptions were made something would happen, and assumptions were made that things didn't happen? It's so hard to tell with what I'm seeing here. So I'm wondering if there wouldn't be value in, like I said, whether it be Blue Diamond or somebody else, having something specific laid out so that all of us know that in the coming year, this is what's going to happen. This is the fertilizer that will be put down. This is the maintenance that will occur, knowing that it's subject to change based on maybe weather or tournaments or other things that may come up. That way, we eliminate one of the issues, which may be miscommunication or not a clear understanding, because the agreement is a little bit more high level but doesn't have specifics. So having whoever is responsible for this give us a little bit more specifics, then we're all on the same page and there isn't any questions. Then we all would know, okay, there was supposed to be an application. Did it occur? What occurred? There might be some value in that. I also noticed in the same agreement, on page 4, it talks about if the city performs any of the necessary responsibilities, that they may charge the manager for the cost that it incurs to doing those. I'm wondering if that is something, I've heard us say that the city has done this or that. Now, there may be some that falls under the city's responsibility to do, but are there things that fall outside of the city's responsibilities that, as an accountability piece, the city is going to invoice back to the company?
No, and that's a great question. So I'll address what you just had mentioned here with this language in the agreement. If the manager fails to comply with maintenance responsibilities, what we've identified as our immediate fixes that we've taken care of yet this fall of the last couple of weeks. FLAW did state that they would be able to accommodate that in their budget. We've been in communication with Al Hauge regarding that. So the repairs, field restoration for Field 5 and the fertilization, those are expenses that will be billed back to FLAW. So instead of using True Green for their fall fertilization, we used a different company, and that was that will be billed to FLAW, as well as the repairs for in Field 5. The city did have Public Works come over to remove some of those, you saw some of those pictures where the entryway was full of weeds and some of those landscape beds. The city just came in and removed that immediately just because it hadn't been done. So we will be able to bill some of those items. What this language means, if the city, so for example, at this point, the city could go and relocate the storage container that was requested to be moved by the end of August, because the time has passed since that's been completed. We could move that and bill for the cost to have that moved at this point in time. We're still trying to work with FLAW on getting that moved and giving them the time and opportunity to do that, but that's what this language covers. If they're given written notice that you're not compliant with our agreement, that's an example of what that reads. To go back to your point or comment about miscommunication, I think you have a great recommendation that really we could make that a little more clear. But in speaking with this, really the agreement is full maintenance responsibilities of the whole complex by best management practices. And that's what we have similar in our contract with Castlewood. It's not a checklist of specifics per se, but it should be manager shall maintain and operate the athletic complex fields in good playable condition in accordance with practices employed for the maintenance of similar facilities. And then it continues on that it should provide all maintenance required to maintain in a safe, clean, and good working condition that complies with our city's maintenance standards. So then it then goes into a little more of specifics, but even having the specifics, you have fall cleanup, overseeding, infield maintenance, trash collection, dumpster and satellite restroom rental, a couple other things, the spring and fall aeration with a core aeration machine. Even with the specifics in there, those were not completed by the maintenance company Blue Diamond this year. The aeration may have been a little bit of a misunderstanding, but being that the city used to take on that role and responsibility, but that has now transferred over to FLA to make sure that's taken care of with, whether it's a volunteer or some, Blue Diamond taking care of that. So core aeration, I believe, was in the contract for Blue Diamond as one of the items listed as included.
So as you look at the bottom there, if we add a little bit more specificity, if it was supposed to be done 4 times, are there time frames where we could expect that to be done? Again, knowing that things are subject to change, nothing is black and white. But if we had a little bit more specificity around that, then we as a board could say, okay, we've got this, it's supposed to occur around this time frame. Did it occur? So that we can be on top of things a little bit more quickly. Did it occur? What did that look like? Put your phone on mute is the newbies rule number 2. Sorry about that.
Okay.
What did that look like? We could be on top of it a little bit more from our standpoint. It would be transparent to us. We would know what was happening. They would know what was happening. Members of the community that are using those fields would then know what they can expect from these fields. And I agree, if it's a premier field, I'm concerned about the safety element as somebody who used to play sports. If your fields are not appropriately maintained, we run the risk of somebody being seriously injured, and then I don't know what the consequences are if somebody is injured on those fields and who's liable for that. But that's another risk that we need to take into consideration. And again, it is nothing, I agree wholeheartedly. FLA has had an upstanding reputation in this community, and they've invested a lot into the children and the community as a whole. I'm just really wondering, so maybe if we had this maintenance plan, and then on the other side, there was, for example, in May, spray 2,4-D plus, we have an invoice in May that matches what was done and how many acres, and so that we can reconcile real time what is happening. That may help. It may help, I don't know, from a communication and transparency perspective on both sides, regardless of who's accountable for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And right now, what you're referring to, is definitely what FLA would be, reconciling invoices and what's to be done. That's something that FLA should be doing with Blue Diamond, and that's where, being that we're letting them have the exclusive rights for management and maintenance, that's where the city hasn't been involved because they're taking care of that, both management and maintenance. So, it sounds like you're, maybe what you're alluding to or talking out loud through is maybe the city needs to have a little bit more of involvement of checks and balances, of making sure the management at the complex is being done to our expectations, or being involved a little bit more is just what I'm kind of hearing you say as you kind of provide your comments.
Yeah, I think we've got if there's a maintenance plan here, like I said, then in May, if this was supposed to happen, they should be proactively providing us with a copy of an invoice that reflects that that was done and when it was done, and what was covered under that, so that we can reconcile back to this plan as a board to make sure that it has been done and that the fields are in the condition that they need to be in, and that we're communicating and working together.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Jamie? If not, we're gonna try to figure out what our next step should be.
Could we have a workshop put on the schedule so we could sit down in the conference room and really hammer it out?
Yes. Would you like it with us or with the FLA board? I personally would like it with the FLA board.
They're invited, absolutely. Yeah, have them
Do we
bring.
want to try to coordinate that it's a joint workshop with them?
Yeah, I think that'd be great, but have them provide all the paperwork ahead of time, so we can articulate our questions and not, come in blind. And then they won't be joining the group blind either. They need to know exactly what Terry said. Hey, where's the documentation that this fertilizer was applied? That these weeds were sprayed?
Yes.
These products were purchased?
I agree.
And I did look in there that it said that the parking lot was supposed to be maintained by Blue Diamond. But yet the city is doing it now.
I think it's important to have the entire board there,
Yeah.
if we do a workshop. Again, this is an opportunity to build relationships, create transparency, have some open communication and dialogue, but I think it has to be the entire board.
One of the things I was thinking earlier in the week before I kind of did some more research on it is, let's try to revise our schedule or our plan with FLA and see if they will accept a revision. With how much Blue Diamond and FLA is intertwined, if we were to exclude the maintenance part of it, I don't know if FLA is capable of doing the scheduling part of it if Blue Diamond is no longer doing the maintenance. Right now, with the way Blue Diamond and FLA is intertwined, I know that's not possible if you take Blue Diamond out of the picture, because they're contracting out their landscaping business to do all their event programming for them. So we need to have the discussion with FLA to see if the partnership together will work. And if they feel like if we were to take away the maintenance, not saying we will, but if we were to decide to, would FLA still be able to do the programming part of it, which is something that they excel at and is the biggest benefit, I think, to the community.
So can you back up? You just said something. So,
Yes.
so just to make sure I understand it. So Blue Diamond, who was contracted by FLA to do the maintenance of the fields, is outsourcing the maintenance of the fields so that they can do the scheduling of the field use?
Blue Diamond is not outsourcing their work. FLA is contracting with Blue Diamond for maintenance.
Yep.
And with their agreement states that Blue Diamond is also running all of their event programming.
Yep.
So that's kind of where it's interesting, why would you have a landscape company do your event programming for you, schedule all the tournament setups, scheduleize advertisement and banners.
Okay,
That's
so
where
it's
it gets
FLA
interesting.
outsourcing it to Blue Diamond. Blue Diamond is not outsourcing part
No
of
one.
their work.
Yes,
There.
they do. They
Well,
outsource their fertilization and their
Fertilization.
weed control.
Okay, so so Blue
What will they
Diamond is
do?
the maintenance, the ground maintenance. They're outsourcing a piece of that
For fertilization.
for
and stuff.
fertilization.
And they're also bringing in
And
the
then-
revenue.
They're they're using that capacity to help schedule tournaments or something?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
And I think
it.
that's, a lot of,
Understand it.
we only know what we know here. I think someone had mentioned before. So this is, with the information we're given, out of the amount that FLA pays to Blue Diamond for contracts and services annually. You'll see the $73,710. The only other expenses, all of that's kind of lumped under one umbrella now. I know from previous budget reports we've received or I've had access to, or the 2012 audit, there were more line items for expenses for FLA. So your workers' comp or True Green, but now that rolls into Blue Diamond. Blue Diamond now just pays True Green. So it used to be a little bit more line itemed expenses within the expense column, and now it's kind of all falls within FLA. So I think these are great questions for the FLA board because, unfortunately, I don't have any answers on how that is distinguished and why or how are there management pieces within the Blue Diamond contract as well. I think just, as a Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, just, we did a lot of work on this management agreement. I think we did a really great job reviewing everything. I think, we really should just take a look at this to make sure that everything is up to date with FLA, and if there's anything outstanding in our management agreement, that's something that we would be able to address with FLA and just try to get resolution on that. So I know you guys had talked about the June 1st deadline for an audit. We don't have that on file yet this year. A big thing is it states on page, just pull it up here. I know Tim had talked about the insurance. So page 7 of the agreement, it says that the manager shall maintain the following forms of insurance. So FLA should have insurance for general liability insurance, up to $1.5 million per occurrence. The FLA should have workers' compensation insurance, liability insurance. So there's quite a bit on page 7 that we don't have any of that information on file from FLA. So that's something that FLA would need to submit from us, that as the manager of this agreement, they should be carrying that information. And then I know, Terry, you had also spoke regarding some more documentation from FLA. So on page 5, and I apologize for going backwards, it says bookkeeping requirements. Manager shall maintain books and records for the operation of the complex. And I think the city, all books and records shall be available for inspection and copying during normal business hours by the city upon request and within 48 hours of any request. So we do have that if you're looking to see if there's any additional information that you guys might feel helpful to make a recommendation moving forward and determining what is the best mix and how can we continue to work with FLA in a positive direction. So, I guess my take on it is, are there areas that the city can provide our resources at little to no additional cost to what we already have? Is there a way we can use any current public works staff? Not increasing our city budget, but maybe seeing if there's times of the year where we can offer our services to help with some of the maintenance to alleviate costs there. Just how can we, without the information, we don't know how we can continue to help FLA in a positive direction. So I think if there's any information you guys think that you might need, we do have that in the agreement that we could have access to books and records.
Jamie, I hear that theme. I've heard it all night. We don't have access to the records, and you just open up the door. I would like to propose to the commission that we mandate that within 48 hours, we have all the records as detailed by the contract, so we can review those records so we are properly prepared for our workshop.
Okay.
I make that motion. I'd like to make the motion that we have all the paperwork within 48 hours from
Okay.
Blue Diamond.
Okay. Motion, looking for a second.
So Jack, 48 hours from tomorrow
Implement
morning.
the contract, yeah, from the time they receive it. Because that's what we're missing. That's the puzzle that is missing right now.
Okay. Motion, looking for a second.
And so just to clarify,
Oh, no, we need a second before
Okay.
we discuss anymore.
Sorry.
Second.
All right, second, looking for discussion.
so to clarify, you're looking for in the management agreement, wherever it says that they shall provide something, you're looking for any of those places, regardless of what the information is. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I'd just like to see some information
Within-
beyond what we were given last
Okay.
January.
Can you specify what information you are looking for?
What did Jamie just read off of page 5 of the contract?
Let me pull it up for you here. Just give me one moment, please.
I'd like to see general liability insurance, everything in that paragraph. I'd like to see workers' compensation insurance. I'd like to see business automobile liability insurance, insurance safeguard against risk of loss. I'd like to see the Blue Diamond maintenance records, the FLA schedule records, audit report. I'd like to see the last 3 years of audit reports if we could, please. I'd like to see everything that has been done on that property. I'd like to see receipts. We were told that some work was put into the bathroom this year. My eyes teared up when I walked into the bathrooms earlier this year. It was so disgusting.
Perfect.
Is that enough detail, Mr. Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay.
So is that an amendment to your motion then, to add those specifics?
1 second. I have another question too.
Yes, sir.
To give FLA the benefit of the doubt, would you amend your motion to have that for September 30th, since that is a lot of records we are asking for?
Boy. Yes, I want details by September 30th. I think we're being very generous considering the records have been requested since June of this year.
Correct. And it was everything that you mentioned, and that was your amended motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So amended motion and a second.
Can I ask?
Any other discussion or questions? We're in the middle of a motion, and then I'm going to get to both of you right after that. We can always amend it again if you have a good point. So 1 second and I will get to both of you.
And just one point of clarification, our goal is to use that information to understand what's happening so that when we have the workshop, we can have an educated conversation and work to build,
Yes.
again, that transparency and that communication and working together.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm done now.
As has been asked since all summer long.
Okay.
And it all started out as, hey, come on, let's talk.
Okay.
Right. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. That passes unanimously. I have two more things I would like to say. I would like to make a motion that that storage container is removed by FLA by September 30th of this year. And if it is not, on October 1st, the city of Forest Lake will remove the container at FLA's expense.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
What's in the container and what is it used for?
I can talk about that. The container is there for storing lacrosse nets and a few cones and other supplies as the information received. We have been working with, have made a recommendation to move it over to near the airport storage. That was agreed upon as a desirable location, and we're just waiting for it to be moved. I did provide another reminder of that within the last week or so, and have not heard back on a date of when that is scheduled to be moved. But it is to store some equipment. City staff did make some other recommendations. We are allowing the other storage container that's over by kind of the concession area. That is allowed to remain. The city recommended putting some windscreen similar to the pickleball courts on the fencing there to kind of help, with the view from the road right there. So their plan is to move some of that over.
Okay.
And the date of the motion was what?
The date of the motion was to have it moved by September 30th, and the city of Forest Lake will move it October 1st if it is not moved by then.
And just before that, I know we did include that in the letter, August 17th. That was one of the items we had requested, and I believe the deadline the first deadline was August 24th to have that moved.
Yes.
What does it cost the city to move it?
Just probably hire, it's a pretty large storage container.
It's a
So
boxcar.
whatever equipment and time would be needed, rental of equipment if we don't have it, and time to do so.
So would the city require then as part of the agreement that the manager reimburse the city for that expense?
At this point, the city could charge that expense back to FLA because they have not completed that task. Essentially, if you read that in the agreement.
Right, would we?
If you consider that a management maintenance item.
Jamie, I'm wondering, since we've had some of these questions come up about FLA in the last month or two, how have you been able to contact FLA and Mr. Alhauge? Has he been responsive to you, or has he been more quiet? Just kind of curious on that.
We've been working together fairly well. I know he attended our August 30th Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission meeting, which, you can certainly watch online for those who haven't seen it. But, he did agree in that meeting that, we need to do something different with fertilization. He was seeking recommendations from Jack and Jim, who have an extensive background in the area. And I believe he had made a reference to, being open to bidding, receiving different bids from a maintenance company. So I think he understands there are where, this is a legitimate, concern in the community with some safety concerns on the field. And he's been very involved in the Field 5 and has made some efforts in the past to improve that. So communication just, he's been aware of that, but we've communicated via phone and email through some of these. I haven't heard back from my last correspondence about a week ago.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So what if we did on the storage unit, on the motion that you've made
Yes.
about the city paying or FLA paying? What if we split the difference? Because we like FLA to stay in the community as a good gesture. So if we kind of split that in half.
I like your recommendation. If I was FLA then, I would leave it to that time, because then I only have to pay for half of the removal. So I will not amend my motion to that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Abstain? That passes. One last thing, I would like to make a motion to set a Forest Lake Parks, Trails, Lakes Commission meeting on October 10th at 6 p.m. with commission members only. And then I would like to have a joint meeting with the FLA board or members of the board at 6:30 on October 10th. I think this will give us a good 30-minute window to review all the documents that they have submitted us. And then we will have a meeting with FLA to get some questions answered and see if we can continue the relationship into the future. So that is the motion. Looking for a second.
Second.
Right. Motion and a second. Any other discussion on that?
Is one meeting enough, or are we just starting with one meeting?
I think we're going to start with one, and
Okay.
I think we'll kind of get the vibe from FLA if they're willing to work with us or not. Like I said, my hope was our next meeting was going to be, let's try to amend our agreement with FLA. And the more I kind of looked into it, the more last few days on how tied together FLA and Blue Diamond is. If you take one piece of that out of it, is FLA capable of doing that agreement? And that's the part we have to kind of to figure out once we get the documentation and once we meet with the board. So, any other comments? Nope, hearing none. Take it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? Abstain? And that passes. So,
Refresh me on the times. and then again,
yes,
starting
so
at-
that was 6 o'clock on October 10th,
Very good.
Tuesday, October 10th. Will be a meeting with just Park Trails Lakes Commission members. It's not a closed session, so it is open to the public. If FLA members wish to sit in and listen, they can. And then we'll have a joint meeting with members of the FLA board at 6:30.
And is that open to the public?
That is also open to the public, yes. I know I had a few hands raised during this time, and I'm more than willing to hear your guys' inputs. Yes.
Can you step up to the microphone? It's a
Yes,
little hard to
please.
hear you. Thank you.
I haven't been to a parks or a city meeting in a few years. You guys are terrific. It's a completely different tenor. The professionalism is outstanding. This is way better than I expected. So first off, kudos to you.
Thank you.
A+. You guys got it nailed. The only thing I would add to your request for documents from FLA is cash records. I didn't see it in the breakout there. I'm sorry, it went by very quickly, but there's a lot of cash that flows through that area with concessions, and it didn't look to me like it was being reported. I ask that you look at that carefully, especially given the commingling of Blue Diamond with FLA and my suspicions based on my previous experiences.
Okay.
Just dig into it. And then finally, I would have argued for 48 hours is more than enough with an organization that keeps good books. 12 hours is plenty. You've already passed it. I'll let it go.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you have a comment? Yes. Yeah, yes, if you could, please.
Just a point on FLA that my kids have gone through sports through and have done a great job with FLA. They've done many things. Trying to remember back several years ago with basketball, I think each student was, or each player was charged like a $35 fee for insurance under the FLA umbrella. The different sports were under it. Several years back, I don't remember when it was. I don't know if it was soccer. A couple of the different sports that were under the FLA umbrella broke out and decided to go off on their own and not stay under them. I don't know if that's changed. Some talk back then was insurance. We were covering insurance under one aspect, and then FLA was covering it, so it was kind of double insurance, and that was one of the reasons supposedly some of the sports groups went off on their own and didn't stay under FLA. I don't know if that's still happening or not. I haven't followed that, but just something to consider.
Perfect. All right. Any other discussion about Fenway Fields?
I'll just end that topic here. Again, like I stated, this was at the workshop last evening for City Council, and this information I just pulled up on the screen was information the City Council saw last evening, provided by City Administrator Aaron Parrish. I think that altogether there has been that great relationship with FLA, and we want to really continue to work with them. I think we do, as a Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, we're given the task to see how we move forward, and you guys have taken some steps this evening on how we're going to move forward there. But these are some of the options moving forward that are present. So these are just things to consider and think about as you're, researching or understanding the relationship and how we can potentially better partner with FLA and build that relationship, or if there's some adjustments that need to happen. Tim, I know you had referenced, could FLA sustain without Blue Diamond? And I think they had in the past, or were doing all of the management with FLA. I know I personally don't know as much about FLA as others in the community, being fairly newer to the position. But I know there's a lot of volunteer efforts, and there are a few paid staff. So, I think that FLA used to operate that way, and it kind of all ended up in a Blue Diamond contract. So I think that, hopefully there's a way we can work together and get everyone on the same page, but we do have options to explore, and I think having all the information is important to making educated decisions on what's best for the community, ultimately, and the kids in the youth sports, that maybe there's ways that they can even be generating more revenue that can get put back into the programming out there. One thing also is we're often reminded about the lights at Fenway, and that's a huge capital expense to the city. So as we did our park planning last November, we also identified how can we identify more streams of revenue. So maybe there's a way to work together to understand the programming, or make improvements that more revenue can be generated off of that complex out there that can then go partly towards FLA and partly towards new lights and additional capital improvements. So those are just things to think about as we're preparing for a workshop, I think October 10th.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right. We'll move quickly through these. Some park and recreation coordinator updates. Park maintenance, other than Fenway.
I will keep these brief. Just one of the biggest things is we finally are getting our pavilion at Cedar Park, this installation complete. It's quite a process, pouring concrete and footings, and pretty extensive. So that we have the footings installed and concrete. That will be going in the first week in October. So we're really excited to have that. I mean, it's a long process, but that is coming full circle. I know, Tim, you've referred to the boards at Tower Park. Those are getting put up by Public Works right now. Looks really nice. I don't know if you've driven by, but I think that's going to be a nice improvement for the community this year. We took out all the old wood deteriorated boards. And Tim, you've seen it.
Yeah, it's right outside my office window, so it works pretty well. Yeah, it's amazing the amount of work that they've put into it. I've seen them out there 30 to 40 times over the summer, 30, 40 different days, digging up the swamp that was out there, and figuring out the filtration issue, and putting in dump truck after dump truck of fill, and it looks fantastic out there.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for it. And the one that's adjacent to it, they've been digging around that one too, and I think you're gonna have I don't think you'll have a filtration problem in that spot either this coming year, so.
We had written off the park, and now it's come back to life because of the city works, and I'd say kudos to them.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
And
Public
our-
Works
our-
has done a phenomenal job,
Yeah.
so they've been great to work with, and just addressing any park concerns or issues that come up. You know, I've been able to work well with them and get them taken care of pretty quickly, so quick turnaround in the maintenance side, and nothing else major to report on maintenance at the time.
Yeah, and even the city council was talking a little bit last night at their workshop on how great Lakeside looks and how much effort the Public Works puts into it, and the work that they have to do, because it, attracts tens of thousands of people over the summer, to keep the grass green and everything. Very big hats off to our Public Works department, so. All right, next would be our grants.
Grants, the one that I'm working on right now is actually in regards to the Major League Baseball, up to $40,000 with a match for field improvements. So that's due October 1st. I've kind of waited to see where things are, what's needed to be done. So I will continue with that. And we do have a couple others that are coming up. Minnesota, Wisconsin Playground. They have their grant opportunity for equipment. So on our next agenda, we really need to look at the donation from the Forest Lake Lions. They generously provided $7,500 to go towards a new piece of playground equipment. So that funding, in conjunction with this grant opportunity, we could likely get at least a few $1,000s additional. We need to make a decision on how to move forward with that funding and grant opportunity. So that will be coming up really soon. And just any other, this is the time of year where quite a few grants start coming up for deadlines over the new year. So continuing to seek them out as they come up.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there a list available of what the city wants? So my wife and I, unfortunately, my daughter passed away this year, and we were actually talking about how we could donate something to the city that she, a memorial, could be a piece of swimming equipment, whatever. We didn't know what to do, or is there, and there are other people in the community that might be willing to donate. Is there something available that we could look at, what the wish list is?
Well, I'm sorry to hear of your loss, and I'd be happy to talk with you a little bit more. We don't have an extensive list. We are working to get kind of a donation program together, but I'd be happy to talk with you and can give you my information to do that and see what we might need or what might be a good fit to provide a memorial.
Thank you.
Next would be budget.
Just included in your packet, as always, is the updated budget report. Nothing noted. We're still trending really well with our budget for this year. You will see, as we've gotten through our summer months, our park maintenance budget, we do still have a good percentage available there. Some of that will go towards the Cedar Park Pavilion installation coming up here in October. And beyond that, we have some opportunity to spend some additional funds. It would go quickly if we do have maybe $10,000 going towards the dredging project. So just kind of keep that in mind of where we're at to date on the park maintenance budget. There is a little bit available yet this year that we can look at some of those additional pieces that we might need, some more items to inventory, swings, dog garbage stations, grills, et cetera. It's kind of the time of the year that we can make those purchases for some of our parks.
All right. And then other.
Just a couple other quick things. The city did get, I should have mentioned this with grants, but I didn't write the grant. It was a city grant, and we've added our recycling bins to Lakeside Memorial Park, and we did receive grant funding again through Washington County, so we'll be implementing recycling in all of our city parks for the next year, 2018. So working on getting those containers purchased and installed for next season, so that's a benefit. Part of that grant funding will also provide educational materials next year, 2018 and 19, to just really educate people about recycling in the parks and provide awareness of that. And I don't think there are that many parks in the in the surrounding area that do offer recycling, so I think it's a great benefit. And really, I think that is it for
Perfect.
what we have going on.
All right. Any other discussion or questions? If not, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Motion, looking for a second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, meeting.